The modern day slave doesn't know that it's a slave.
Let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food.
The government encouraging people to eat foods that it knew would make them sick because of the lobbying efforts of the industry. And that's really reprehensible.
I grew up in DC eating the standard American diet. I initially identified veganism as a white thing. It was because I didn't know my history. All I knew was we turned scraps into soul food, and I thought that was our only culinary legacy.
Hi, I'm Chris James, and you're watching Healthy Alternative. Today we have a ultra special, super duper wonderful guest because today I have with me Jasmine Leyva. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Oh my God! I felt so much. There was so much anxiety. Jasmine is the creator of an amazing documentary that just caught my eye a few weeks ago called The Invisible Vegan. And the YouTube algorithm gods or whatever were just working on our favor because I'm like, I don't know where this documentary came from, but it's like 100% in alignment with my community, the message that I teach. And I don't focus as much on like food. My thing is more of like the health and wellness through like therapy and things of that nature. But food is a huge part of it. You know what I mean? So being able to introduce this aspect through another melanated being like myself to our community in a voice I think that we can digest is super important. So thank you for coming and being here.
Oh, thank you so much for bringing me into your vision.
Definitely. So I wanted to get a little background information about you because from what I'm able to gather, you're from DC originally?
Born and raised Southeast DC.
Oh, South DC. Okay.
Southeast DC.
Oh, okay. Got you. I am not familiar with DC too much. I've literally just driven through it. Hey, y'all, I mean, Texans are crazy drivers, but DC is wild. What you pointing Texans?
I thought you were gonna say I thought you were talking about Texan pride.
Oh, Texan pride? No, yeah, Texan pride is next level, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm actually not from Texas. I've been here for 10 years, but like I'm an honorary Texan. So I guess I gotta up my pride. I just got my cowboy boots and my cowboy hat, so
Oh,
yeah.
look at you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm an honorary Angelino because I've been out here for about 17 years.
Okay, yeah. How do you like living out there?
You know what? It is got its pros, it's got its cons. I haven't found the perfect place yet, but LA is pretty dope, but socially it can be a little nuanced.
I can even, yeah. I went out there for the first time maybe about a year ago. Me and my brother, we went to Sacramento and then we went down to LA. And LA was way colder than I thought it would be. Like we got towards like the boardwalk and stuff, and it was just very windy, very cold. People wearing jackets in the summer. I was like, this isn't what I expected.
Yeah, no, LA, I definitely got set up because when I came out here, I didn't come out here with a winter coat. People are like, oh, it's LA, you don't need no winter coat.
Right.
I got out here in the wintertime. I was like, no, it's legitimately cold.
Yeah, like
it's like 40 degrees outside.
like legit, yeah.
But you don't get the same winters that, I'm from the East Coast. Like you don't get 20-degree days. You don't get all that nonsense, but it does get cold.
Facts, yeah. Yeah, I'm actually from the Midwest, so I spent most of my time in Ohio, but New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, I'm used to blizzards and stuff like that. So one of the things that was important for me, like as I'm kind of going through my journey, is learning more about my family's heritage. Do you know much about your family? Like, is your family from Washington, D.C. as well, or where do they originate?
No, my family is from the South. So like a lot of Black people in DC, they migrated from North Carolina. Well, my mother did because the rest of my family kind of, we got some in Georgia, some in New Jersey, some in Florida. But yeah, we come from North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, my family's from Kentucky. That's something I found out. Yeah.
That's like the South for real.
The bluegrass, yeah. And but it's interesting because that means that we probably had some similar when it came to food and stuff, there were some similarities with our family coming from the South. One of the things that my family ate all the time were chitlins. Like, you, you got, is, you like or did you like chitlins? I'm assuming you don't eat them anymore.
Not only did I like chitlins, I liked the cult, like the tradition me and my mom had around chitlins
Mm.
because, we would just have, my mom told me like chitlins are not good for you, even when we were eating meat. So we would only have them once a year at Christmas. And I remember she would get 3 big buckets of them and she would clean them so good that it only ended up being like 1 bucket left to cook.
Wow.
And so then when I got older, she would clean them herself and then she taught me how. And so then, I got a little bit older, I'd be there cleaning chitlins and that smell would stay in my hands for like 2 days.
So first of all, like my grandma, I mean, we didn't eat chitlins a lot either. They never taught me that chitlins were bad, but from the first time I smelled them, I was like, yeah, it's a wrap. Like, because I was introduced to them as they were cleaning them, and I'm asking my grandma like, what is that? And she's like, chitlins or chitterlings, as my uncle calls them. And I've never had them, Yeah. And my grandpa's one of them old Southern dudes. Like he used to eat pork rinds. Like that's what he would snack on. And they just loved that. But one of the things that my grandpa did have, he had a garden. And that like when I was younger, I was like, a garden, I don't get it. Like he would go and pick his tomatoes and eat them. But I really gained an appreciation for it later on in life. And that's definitely something you touch on in your documentary.
So right now, anybody that lives in the surrounding community or neighborhood, in a few months will have access to kale, collard greens, turnip greens, carrots, tomatoes, some more okra, beets, radishes, all types of stuff.
Did you grow up around gardens, or when did you very first learn the importance of like being able to raise your own food?
I mean, I didn't learn that lesson until adult life. When I was young, I guess similar to you, my grandmother had a garden, and I remember, I would go and then I would have to like shuck corn and like get the snow peas and,
Yeah.
all that stuff. But it wasn't until like I started flirting with veganism and started reading about everything they were doing to our food that I realized the importance of growing your own food. And even how it's like an act of, now I almost think like having a garden, that's activism. That's almost you saying like, hey, this food system is so effed up. Like I need to take my power back and grow my own food. It's rebellion. I didn't look at gardens like that initially.
That's deep. I to this moment, I had never thought about it that way, but I love different perspectives. I think during when COVID hit, I think there was a movement for a lot of people to start wanting to garden, and I definitely went out. I got like 50,000 seeds. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna be ready, because
Yeah.
this is gonna be the new
Yeah.
currency. Yeah. So I'm very, very curious to know, like, with you coming from, more of like a traditional Southern background, your mom's from the South, how did you really start learning about veganism to begin with? Like, did you even know what veganism was?
Absolutely not. Like growing up, I heard of vegetarianism,
Mm,
but again, like to me, it was just, I was like, that's dumb. I don't know why anyone would give up meat. Like there was a disconnect. I just did not understand it.
yeah.
But then I moved to Los Angeles, and the health wellness culture is that strand is a lot stronger out here. So that's when I became introduced to veganism. And oddly enough, even though people associate it with like, whiteness, I learned about veganism from a Black woman.
Mm.
And I think that's what made it click even more. Like I got the information from a source that I trusted.
And that's what you are now. That's like the circle of life and how information is disseminated. I think culturally, our information has always come from us, and in recent times, it's pretty much null and void. Like I have to go and ask my mom or my grandma or my uncles for specific information. It's never been just them sharing knowledge, and I think that's something that we have to definitely start doing on a broader scale. Um,
Yeah.
So what are you a like a filmmaker by trade? Like did you have the ability to make documentaries? Did you learn along the way? Like, how did you produce this film?
Oh, well, I went to school for TV and film. I was in grade school, I was a theater kid. Like, I've always been interested in that kind of stuff. And then I was working on documentary series. So there's like this musical biographical series, docu-series called Unsung. There was another one, Being, and then, I worked on lifestyle series. So I already had a background in TV. And I always think, when you go to companies, one of the reasons why you should be there is to kind of gain the knowledge so you can do things for yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I took what I learned on the documentary series and said, like, oh, now let me do this for myself for a topic that I care about.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's actually something that I learned when I was much younger, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. Robert Kiyosaki said that, when you get a job, or you go to get a job or a position, you do it for what you learn, not for what you make. And
Yes.
like that concept, especially being a younger person, it's a little bit hard to grasp. You really want to resist it. You're like, nah, because it really matters how much money you make. But as you get older and you mature, you're like, no, like the wisdom that you gain from that position or being able to make mistakes on other people's dime, like that's invaluable.
Mhm.
um,
Agree.
so what would you say was your inspiration for wanting to make this documentary? Because obviously you started making these changes in your life, and this kind of grasped your eye. But what made you want to make the documentary and kind of share it with everybody else?
Well, I mean, I love my people. And when I went to California, and I would tell my friends back home, my black friends, like, oh, yo, I went vegan, and I noticed I was having all of these different health changes in my body for the positive, for the better, and TMI in advance, I was like yeast infections,
Mm,
hemorrhoids, my skin, even like my digestion, the way I smell, like all these things improved. And when I started reading up on it, I started seeing how, hold on, wait, when you eat a plant-based diet, this lessens your chance of having cancer. You can reverse heart disease. You can reverse diabetes too. Meanwhile, I'm seeing members of the family. It's like, wait, he on cholesterol, he
mm.
on diabetes. And all I'm reading where it's like, oh, they have all these studies saying all these things can be reversed with the right diet. So when I start trying to share this information, people weren't receptive because they were looking at like, oh, you on that, you went to LA, now you with these white people and the white diet. And then I start looking at how veganism was marketed, and I'm just like, you know what? This is often marketed towards white, affluent, heteronormative people. This is not an inclusive movement. Like, it
Mm.
doesn't look like now it's a little bit more inclusive, but like, when I first started 17 years ago, no, you didn't see people that look like me as the face of veganism. So then I was just like, you know what? Let me do a documentary with people that look like me, people speaking language, talking in a way that's relatable. Let me bring it back historically. Like, look, no, this is not a white thing. Look at Angela Davis doing this. Look at Coretta Scott King doing this. So just really bringing out the culture within the movement that I felt had been lacking.
I'm in 100% alignment. Like that was almost my story when I started learning about, different therapies that we could use, natural therapies we could use to reverse disease. It was like, oh, everybody has to know this. And I wanted to use it. I wanted to spread it on a platform where people could have access to it. And a lot of people tell me, like, Chris, it really means a lot being able to get this information from someone that looks like me. And so
Yeah.
that's so important. But one of the things that, like, one of the questions I had in my head was, were you surprised that when you look at like leaders in history, some of the leaders that we in our community, were you surprised at how many of them promoted like plant-based diets?
You know what? Yay and nay, because it's one of those things like it's more like, when Black people are promoting something positive, that's not always in the forefront, you know? Of course, rappers promoting materialism and all this stuff like that gets thrown in the front. So it doesn't really surprise me that we had a whole beautiful place in the health and wellness movement and that got overshadowed. Didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. I just think it's for me when I started doing the research, it's like it's not even just like spotty here and there. It was like almost part of the infrastructure, when you're looking to unite people and you're speaking a positive message, the way you eat is almost synonymous with that energy. And I think that one of the major issues that we have today is a lot of us have what I call that I got it from Dr. Sabi, but toxic thinking, where we have mucus on the brain because of the different foods and things we eat. And we really can't have the discussions we need to move our community forward because people have this toxic thinking. We're lacking. And I think that our ancestors realized that. And maybe even if there's powers that be that wanted us to be able to be divided, I think maybe they realized that too, which is why certain foods are pushed on our communities.
Right.
I think a part of the documentary you talked about food deserts, or one of your guests talked about food deserts.
A food desert, by definition, is an area where there is not access to either a grocery store or healthy foods within like a mile or more.
Unless the neighborhood is going through gentrification, where there are more affluent young whites moving in, then you start to see these healthier options coming.
I grew up surrounded by nothing but fast food chains and carryouts. I didn't even have the awareness to see that as a problem.
I didn't know what that was. When did you learn what a food desert was, and how do you think it impacts our community?
I learned what a food desert was when I was first putting my documentary together, because I was reading books on veganism. I forgot which one introduced me to the term, but not and when you think of food desert, I think it was Badass Vegan made this point too. Like, you think of a community that lacks food, but the double problem is, it's like, not only do we not have enough food, a food desert, it's also an excess problem. It's like, and there's also too much poor foods, because you go into communities and you'll see, communities of color, poor communities, they have the most dialysis centers. And something like this is a visual showing you, hey, we got more sick people in this radius than we do in Beverly Hills. So what do you do with the sickest neighborhoods? Let's put in the most liquor stores. Let's put in the most fast food restaurants, even the billboards that you put in these communities. Why would you market the worst food to the sickest communities? Like, you think at some point this will become, this isn't just, a capitalist thing. This is something that politicians should be looking like, no, we're setting these people up to die.
That's actually a very, very good point. Man, that's a powerful perspective, because logically you would say, like, if you're a government, or if you're a politician, or you're a council member, and you're looking to improve the quality of living in a particular area, yeah, you would be like, look, let's take the liquor stores out. Let's take all of the things out that's going to perpetuate this bad behavior, the poor eating and the sickness, and let's put good things in. Let's flood the community with initiatives, co-ops, farms, or local gardens, or even classes to educate. And this is actually one of the issues that I have with modern medicine is, when you look at like breast cancer, and I just did a video talking about uterine cancer and how it's linked to hair straightening products. Why do you think it is that with a lot of the knowledge, because you were able to find it yourself as you went through this process, so the information is out there, why do you think it's not getting to our community?
Because the information is not coming from this information that we're talking about. Like, this needs to come from the government. This needs to come from the school system. This needs to come from our priests. This needs to come from our doctors. So, like, what we're saying goes against what's coming from all of these sources that people look up to. And, and now it's like, we're reaching a tipping point where you got more and more people speaking up. So it's like, it's getting out there, but it's still not coming from the people that it needs to come from. Like, this information we talk about, this needs to come from the president of the United States.
Right.
But for whatever reason, it's not.
Yeah. And it's
because they're taking money, they're getting campaigns from all these pharmaceutical companies. Like, us being sick, that's a whole $1 billion industry. So when politicians start speaking up about it, then it's like they're challenging this $1 billion industry. When doctors start talking about it, they're challenging this $1 billion industry. And there's a system in place that they're trying to keep in place, which is keeping everyone silent. And therefore, it's not even like Black people are trying to reject the information. The information is not being properly put out there for consumption.
Right. And that's actually an interesting point because a lot of people will say, "Oh, black people, they're not going to be interested in this." You know what I mean? Like you talk about soul food or comfort food and things that we're traditionally used to eating, but it's like if you really laid it out for somebody and was like, "Hey, this soul food that you're eating is eventually going to give you diabetes. You could have your leg amputated. You could die early. You can continue eating it. That's your choice. But there is another option." And one of the things that I think you said that was key in the documentary, you were talking about the culture. It's not, maybe it was an interview actually, but it's not about the soul food itself, but it's the creation. It's the creative energy that was used to be able to take like these lesser foods and make delicacies out of them. And I think that that's important because when you look at like vegan, like black owned vegan restaurants, you see that. You see the creativity that's gone into it, and it's like exciting.
When you look at traditional West African diets, they are diets that are plant-based, low in fat, and also contain very little meat. West Africans who were used to eating this traditional West African diet were essentially dragged from their homes, shipped across the ocean, and then confined to plantations where they were literally fed the garbage of the plantation.
It didn't dawn on me at that time that my ancestors come from a rich land with rich soil and rich farmers. All I knew was we turned scraps into soul food, and I thought that was our only culinary legacy.
I am curious to know, like, how did you go about choosing some of the people that you did interview? Because one of the people you interviewed was Dr. Milton Mills, which he is a doctor. I mean, I don't know all his accolades and everything, but I know that he's one of the most prominent black doctors that's promoting a plant-based diet.
So I think, for my documentary, I just wanted to add balance. And again, like when you want something to be relatable, I thought about like, okay, what are some of the different voices that people will want to hear this information from? So I definitely thought it was important to have it, to have an acclaimed doctor in the documentary. And not only that, like having a regular doctor, having a holistic doctor, having Dr. Breeze Harper, like a Harvard graduate who studied critical race theory and food, to have a food scholar, to have, a basketball player, somebody who relies heavily on the body, to have a model, like people whose lives are really intertwined with food. So I just kind of wanted to hit it from all angles. And even little Genesis Butler, just to see, she was the young child in the video. I think at the time she might have been around like 10, but just to see how, when she was young, when someone kind of explained it to her, she's just like, no, I don't want to eat these little chickens. Like, why? No, I want to take care of them. I think that's how a lot of us naturally are until we kind of get brainwashed into, let's make everything a slave and kill everything when we don't have to.
Yeah. That right there was actually part of my tipping point. So when I started changing my dietary habits, it was really health oriented. That was my main thing. And then when I realized that I was thriving without eating like animal products, one day I was just like, I guess I don't really need to do this anymore. Maybe I should just make the statement, hey, I don't eat meat. I don't eat animal products anymore. And I was watching a documentary about kosher butchering. And it was showing how it was talking about how with the animals, like they won't sedate them, right? There's nothing to like comfort the animal before they're slaughtered. And then when, they literally just showed these people holding this cow down, slitting its throat and letting the life drain out of its eyes. And I was like, yeah, that's it. I can't do this anymore. Like I can't be a part of this. So I think having that balance and showing the different walks of life and different reasons, because like when I thought about veganism, I thought about it from like an animal activist point of view. It was never, to me, like when I was ignorant, I didn't know about the health benefits of it. And I did want to touch on, you had mentioned that you've seen some health benefits. I would love to maybe highlight some more of those things because you did talk about it a little bit in your documentary. I think you had mentioned that you had started gaining weight at one point in time. You felt conflicted about the weight gain, and what were some of the, I guess, the problems that came along with it, and then I guess eventually how those problems were solved.
Yeah, so one thing that was happening, like acne. Like I was starting to get really bad acne, and I forgot it was some like acne stuff. I remember Alicia Keys was promoting it, and I was like trying all this like acne stuff. And again, like that kind of once I started eating better, I noticed my skin started to clear up. Digestion. I don't think I ever knew before I went vegan. I don't think I ever knew how my digestion was supposed to work.
Mm.
Like even things like, just being bloated, having like painful gas, like even, just the way the smell, like all that. Like I didn't know. It's like, oh, it's not even supposed to be like this.
Mm.
It's supposed to be like a smooth system. So that my digestion changed for the better. My menstrual period used to be this like painful, disastrous part of the month where I would OD on pain pills
Mm.
just to like go through my week. And I would go through these like California king size pads. And then, when I went plant-based, totally different. Like now my period is like this cute little friend that visits once a month, very chill. And then there was another time actually where I went to the doctor and they were saying that I guess there were cancerous cells on my cervix
Mhm.
and they wanted to burn a piece of my cervix off. And this is when I wasn't like full vegan. I was still kind of like vegan this month, doing whatever this month. And I was just like, well, how long do I have to go before I need like to get this surgery? And they were like, once you kind of hit the 6-month mark, like you need to be in there and get this worked out. I literally fasted and just took like everything out of my diet, only consumed healthy things. I went back, they said all the cancerous cells are gone.
Wow.
And I do want to put a disclaimer on this because I'm not a doctor. If you have cancer, I'm not telling you to forego medical treatment and do what I did, but I am telling you that's what I did and that's how the cancerous cells went away.
Wow, that's insane. That is important. I think I really wanted to dive into, what you experienced and what you saw because obviously we're not telling people, to forego medication or their prescriptions or anything of that nature, but it's important to have these different stories and experiences because this is like I think that there's only been one narrative painted, and so many women that I've interacted with, whether we're dating or just, like family, tell me about their cycles and how painful they are. And your story is very like normal, right? Where, when it's like debilitating, almost to the point where like there's certain days of the week or the month where you can't work, you got to be home. And that affects the finances. Relationally, a lot of women have told me that, the hormonal imbalances cause them to feel erratic and kind of out of control. And what you're saying is by adopting a plant-based diet, you were able to see a lot of those issues begin to resolve, whereas maybe conventional medication wasn't able to have that impact. And I just think that's important to highlight.
Yeah. And then on top of that, it's also important that no one tells us that. It's one of those things where I shouldn't have, when I had those cancerous cells and I went home and just did like, fasting and healthy foods and the cancerous cells went away. My doctors should have been the ones telling me that was an option. Like,
Right.
okay, you can try to eat healthy foods. Their first go-to is we're going to burn off a piece of one of your organs.
Crazy.
Like, that's insane.
And then there's a disparity, it seems like, in how people of certain cultures are treated when it comes to the medical industry. I mean, that could probably be a whole different documentary, but it's not equal. And I think I have my opinions about why that is and where that stems from, but I think it's important for our people to know that we are like getting the short end of the stick. So we have to be willing to take our own health and wellness in our own hands and just learn and grow and do for ourselves. I wanted to ask you, as you're going through this process of creating this documentary, you're talking to all these different experts, you're really like you're immersed in this process. What are one or two things that you learned from creating this documentary that either maybe like caught you by surprise or was like really insightful for you personally?
Oh, so the most insightful part was, because I just I keep it buck. I did not give a shit about animal rights. Not it didn't come from a cruel
Hmm.
place. Like it's not like I would see the cruelty and go, oh well, but it just wasn't when I would see when I would see people all gung ho for animals, like there was a bit of resentment. Like, and my people out here suffering, like we out here getting killed and y'all putting up more fights for these chickens. Like, I think that's where I was coming from. But then, I had when animal rights was broken down to me from, again, when you hear from your source,
Mm,
and to hear from a Black woman. And I kind of read Afko's book, and I don't want to, because her book was it was definitely a little bit technical, and I hope I'm explaining her point correctly. But it was making the point that you don't want to take on the traits of your oppressor,
mm,
because you have to think, when Europeans, it wasn't even about the fact that the enslavement was happening all over the world. It was just like how it was done.
mm.
Like it was just like, why did it have to be so cruel? So with the food system, same thing. It's just like killing animals for food. Like honestly, that's a part of the circle of life. But the problem is you got to look at how cruel this system is. So when we with our dollar, when we support that system, when we support sadistic practices against living creatures, it's almost like we're supporting a part of what colonizers did a long time ago.
Right.
And not comparing us to like animals. No, not even that, but just saying like, just being okay with that kind of cruelty and turning that kind of cruelty into, cruelty against living things into a huge business. So, that's not, I have to think culturally, like that's not where I come from. Like that's not what our people were doing. Indigenous people, yes, they killed animals. They prayed over it.
Right.
They used every part of the animal. They understood balance, which is not what's happening now. What's happening now is not of our culture.
Absolutely. That's a very, very good point. And that's, like I said, after I kind of started learning about it myself, I really did see that part of it. And it was a beautiful connection that I was able to develop with nature once I recognized the importance of being in alignment with nature, and including animals and even bugs. Um, it's there's an energetic component to it as well. Like it's not just as simple as okay, we're causing harm to these animals, or we're just trying to feed ourselves. But there's because we're energetic creatures. When you do something evil to a creature and then eat that creature you did something evil to, all of the energy, the fear, the anxiety, and all that stuff, it gets imparted into you. And I think this is part of the reason why we have a hard time moving forward. We were talking earlier. We're eating negative energy all the time. We're watching it on TV. We're just consuming it, and no one's really talking about that, the kind of the metaphysical aspect of that. But I think it's important not to ignore. Whereas with our ancestors, like you mentioned, there was a ton of respect for animals. I mean, trees, plants, like nature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nature takes care of us. We're supposed to take care of nature. We're overfishing the oceans. We have a lot of problems, and of course, you're seeing some of the bigger impacts on a larger scale when it comes to weather and just other issues we have.
Yeah, and it's sad that, slavery has kind of disconnected us from, what I think could be a beautiful purpose for a lot of melanated people. Like we don't want to, a lot of people, we don't want to work in the dirt. We don't want to, plant, because we associate that with slavery.
Hmm.
When really it's like, no, 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 that's not, us knowing the land and protecting the soil from erosion and growing properly.
Mm.
Like that's, our people were in tune with the land. Like we should have kept that. Like that should have stayed a part of our culture. And because of the fact it's taken out of the culture, like the food system is what it is. Like think about what the food system would look like if even Native American, African, like all this indigenous science was infused into the food system that we have now.
Mm.
We wouldn't have all these problems with climate change.
And the school system, that's a whole another monster. I mean, that was like created by Rockefeller. I guess the current school system that we have, and I don't think there were any. I think education was kind of like secondary. It was more about being able to manipulate a population for a means to an end. So I think we place a lot of emphasis on higher education and things of that nature, but it's like, but where are you getting your information from though? Like learning is important, education is important, but the source matters, and we need to put more emphasis on our source material. And if obviously it'd be great for us to get some schools and start creating some of those programs where we're teaching those indigenous practices. And I know for a fact it would resonate with us because it's in our DNA.
Right, right,
So
right.
um,
And then you wouldn't have to be a baby. Like now they kind of teach us how to be babies because you got to think, what were they learning back in the day? Your parents were teaching you how to grow your own food. If you got sick, they were teaching you how to go into the woods and which plants you could take for yourself. You were taught to heal yourself. Like now it's just like, oh, let's just teach these few people how to heal. So then the rest of the population, we have to kind of be slaves to these few people every time we get sick, because for whatever reason, they didn't want to include in our educational system how we heal ourselves. They don't want to teach us law because it's like, why would we teach them how to defend themselves? Like, it's just, yeah.
yeah.
But again, that's a whole nother.
That's a whole different documentary. I mean, how many documentaries are you trying to make?
Right.
I am curious to know, like, so obviously, when you interact with people now, like if you're going to talk to a friend or a family member about, changing their dietary habits or whatever the case, how do you approach that? Like at this point, like how do you approach it?
Oh, you know what? See, I got the cheat code because I haven't filmed.
Right.
But to your point though. So again, in knowing your people, like in knowing my people, like no one wants to feel, everybody wants to feel like they have a choice. And like I think a lot of vegans, you get invited to a dinner and then you start preaching the vegan gospel. Where it's like a lot of people at the dinner table, they're stressed out at work. They're dealing with their relationship. When they come to this dinner table, like they just trying to sip wine and have fun and laugh. And sometimes when you take it down the food insecurity, food, you take it down that route, it's almost like you are infringing on someone else. So I'm respectful of that. And like, if I'll ask like, hey, it's this book on veganism. If I got it for you, would you read it? Or, would you mind checking out, it's this documentary, it's about food. I would love for you to check it out. Would you give it a try and tell me what you think? Like, I think that's more of my approach. Because even when people, I look at it like I'm the CEO of Jasmine. Like, it's not really my job to go to someone else and tell them how to live their life. Like, I'm not credentialed for that. I don't have a nutrition degree. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. They don't really have a reason to trust my knowledge over their own. And I understand that. So I refer them to other sources. And if they're open, cool. But if they're not, it's not my job to force them open, because inevitably all that will give them like a stigmatism around veganism, and it can make them more closed off in the future. And then also you just lead by example. Like sometimes people will see me, they'll see me going on 40 and they'll see like, well, the way she's going on 40 looks a little bit different than what other people are doing. And then they'll be more inclined to try something just by me being a cool individual and just living my life and just being an example.
I agree. First of all, you going on 40. That's what's
no.
Yeah, I didn't know how old you were. I mean, that's incredible, but I'm not surprised.
I mean, I'm mid 30s.
Okay, you mid 30s.
So I don't want to like stretch it, but
Well, I mean, you know how we do. Once you hit, my friend used to say I was going on 40 after 25. So, I mean, that's just that's just how it is. But I could easily see, like, because just interact with people so much, and I could easily see how you can maintain your looks based on the trajectory that you're on. As a matter of fact, one of the ladies that you had mentioned, I don't remember her name, but she's the lady from LA who has the Stuff I Eat restaurant, right?
Chef Babette.
Yeah. So she's what? She almost in her 70s now?
She's in her 70s,
And
killing it.
yeah,
Killing it.
looks amazing. Also, are you familiar with Annette Larkins?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Annette Lark.
Another one killing it. Goals.
Right. Yeah. I'm on that same path. Like me personally, I'm like, yo, the way I look today, I want to look the same way 40 years from now. Let's do it. Because we
Yep.
see the
Yep.
examples. People are able to do
Yep.
it.
Yeah, because I thought, honestly, I thought, pills, I thought that was gonna be my destiny. You see everybody like, oh, okay, cool. When I grow up, I'll need pills for cholesterol, probably need pills for blood pressure. And not knowing, like, wait, you mean to tell me I could just eat a certain way and then I don't have to worry about nothing?
Yeah. And you have a higher quality of life too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like people will argue with me sometimes. They'll be like, Chris, we're living longer. And I'll be like, well, first of all, what time period are you talking about? Because we have less centurions than we had 100 years ago. But the people that are living longer, the quality of life is trash. Like it's not like you're
Right.
living. It's not like you could go to Europe and go to the beach and surf and you know what I mean. Like people are just surviving. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, yeah, I don't want to live to 90 and be on a bunch of different pills and I can't walk because it's too much weight on my knees and like, I don't want that life.
Yeah.
So,
So, what has been like? I'm just curious to know what it's been like. Maybe the people around you, your friends, your family. What's it been like now that you've got your documentary out? What are their reactions to it?
you know what? A lot of them, some of them, as soon as they saw it, they were inspired to make changes in their life and they told me up front. And then even, my brother, who was the last one I thought would entertain me, he told me, he was like straight up, he was like, you know what, Jasmine? He was like, I'm not going to become vegan tomorrow. I'm telling you that. He's like, but you definitely made me think about some things.
Yeah,
And it was like something as simple as that. I'm like, that was the goal right
that
there.
was worth
And
it.
I have friends like, they'll come up to me like 2 years later, like, I didn't tell you this, but I actually went meat free after watching your documentary. So a lot of people were receptive to the information. And even my aunt, she, I guess, got diagnosed. She was in the pre-diabetic stages. Her doctors tried to load her up on medication. And she was just like, let me see what my niece is talking about. And she's in her 70s and she tried it. And yeah, she told me, she was like, she went back to the doctor. Her blood was better. She no longer needs the pills. And she said she like lost a little bit of weight.
Mm,
So
that's
it's
beautiful.
been a good reception.
That's beautiful. Like one of the things that I learned, I think it was in sales. People typically need like 3 points of contact with an idea or a product or something in order to like make a decision. So for me, like my grandma was the first one. So the same grandma that was making the chitlins. This is the funny part. Same grandma that's making the chitlins. Later down the road, maybe like 5, 10 years later, it's like, yeah, we're not doing that no more. Like all the pies are gonna have like whole wheat crust now. We're not doing macaroni and cheese anymore. Like she switched the whole thing up, and I'm like, yo, grandma, like I'm confused at this point. Like I don't understand. We went from chitlins to wheat crust pies. I don't want to do this. It's like it's one time in a year we get to eat like this, and she planted a seed in me, and that seed didn't grow for 20 years, but I think that it's important to be able to plant those seeds. I think your documentary does that. I'm definitely going to be using it as a resource because I think it's just what I've learned from just growing my own platform. The more easily digestible the information is, the more people will consume it because they get overwhelmed by the big words and the things they don't understand. And being able to have a resource that's just so easy to digest, I think is going to be an amazing tool. So I appreciate you for creating it.
Yeah. And even to that, I know like Cedric the Entertainer, when he did it, he called himself veganish, like vegan for the most part. But if he travels a lot, if he goes somewhere and they don't have options, like it is what it is.
Mm,
And some people say like he doesn't belong. Why is Cedric the Entertainer in it? He doesn't belong in it. And it's just like, what, at the end of the day, a lot of people are gonna watch it just because Cedric the Entertainer's in it.
mm,
A lot of people are going to tune in and stay interested because he's there, throwing jokes
right.
in it, and he's using his voice to help other people get healthy. So instead of finding like the judgmental reason why he doesn't belong, like look at the, just look at the bigger picture. So, and my bigger picture was like, yes, I did want it to be relatable.
Yeah. Actually, so it's interesting that you have brought that up because when I was watching it, I'm like, is Cedric vegan though? And you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like what's he doing in this video. I was just like, is he vegan? I didn't know that. But one thing that I did notice, and I don't really follow Cedric, so but he looked better to me, for whatever reason. Maybe not as inflamed, since the last time I saw him, which I don't know. I don't really follow him, so it's been years. But he looked better. And oh my God, like John Sally, like I used to watch him on a different platform, and I'm like, yo, this dude is so in touch. He has a huge voice, and I think that the impact that he's had just with his resources and how he's using them, just an amazing addition. I think the cast of people that you brought on was phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I want to see a part two. I mean, I don't know, like I don't know what your plans are, but part two, and just continue to see you flourish, and whatever your endeavors are, whatever you decide to do. Because I'm not at. Well, let me ask you, because I don't know. Like, do you have any goals in mind for the future? Any other projects that you're working on that you could talk about?
Yes, I'm working on another documentary about food, but it's more around like the psychology around eating. And it's about kind of eating disorders in
Mm,
communities of color and just how they manifest differently. Because we always think eating disorders, it's like the skinny, affluent white girl who wants to be part of the cheerleading team, throwing up or not eating. And it's just like, that's not the only way eating disorders manifest. Like you have a lot of, people who are dealing with stress and they don't realize that the stress that they're dealing with is causing a reaction in their brain that's making them eat.
mm.
So kind of dissecting those relationships with food.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that one because that's kind of what I was alluding to, and it's some of the topics that I touch on, in my practice and things of that nature. So I look forward to
Yeah.
that. I do want to give you.
It talks about men too, because when you think of even athletic culture,
Mhm.
how if you're on a football team, coach is telling these young boys eat all this food to bulk up. It's just like, oh, okay, so basically you guys are prescribing eating disorders to young men because having them eat all this food just so they hit a certain goal so they can wrestle or play whatever position on a football field, that's not healthy.
Oh,
They might be athletic, they might be fit, but like we're causing wear and tear on their organs and we're setting them up with bad habits.
yeah,
Like you see a lot of those football players once they leave the league, even basketball players, it's not like they leave and they age very well and look
right.
healthy. It's just like, oh, you know what, look how they aged. They didn't age well because
Mm,
they weren't healthy.
right.
They were just running off a bunch of bad food.
And that's a key, right? There's a difference between fitness and health. There a lot of people just like fitness, health, and fitness. Like no, fitness, health. They do correlate. There are correlations, but they're not the same thing. And it's important to you listen. That's gonna be a good documentary. That's gonna
Yeah, fitness and health, and people think beauty and health are the same things too.
right,
It's just like,
right.
oh, look at this girl because she's a size 6 and beautiful, she's healthy. Not
Hmm.
necessarily.
Right. There's
And because this woman is a size 16, she's not healthy. It's like not necessarily.
There are, I
So
know, I know women. I actually interviewed one of my coaches that come on and talked about. She's probably like a size 2 or I don't know 4. I don't know sizes, but she's very small, maybe like a 2. And she was pre-diabetic. They were about to start her on medication. She was dealing with severe constipation. Some of the issues that you had, uh, fibroids, um, really heavy periods, having to take days off of work. But she was really, really thin, or even slim thick, or whatever. So by the eyes, she looked good, but inside, like she was in so much pain and agony, and not enough emphasis is put on that because there's women that are suffering in silence, or just people that are suffering in silence because society's like, you don't really have room to talk about your issues because look at you. You know what I mean? So I could see where, touching on some of those, I haven't even thought about that, how, young, especially young football players, because you're talking about like professional athletes, but what I've noticed is, what do you call them? Just ex-athletes in general, whether they high school athletes or college athletes that don't necessarily go pro. Once that level of activity decreases, you see the outcomes change exponentially. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Um, do you want to share like your social media or anything so people can get in touch? Where can they see the documentary? Like, we need some of your socials. That's what they call it now.
Oh my gosh. So fair warning, me and social media, we kind of have a funny relationship. It's just one of those things, it doesn't really bring me joy, so I'm not like on it.
Uh-huh.
But I make an appearance. So the Invisible Vegan on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. It's just at Invisible Vegan on Twitter. And if you want to see the film, Amazon. I actually put it on YouTube for free, so there's no excuses. It's on Tubi TV, that's a free streaming service, and Quelly TV, which is the first Black female-owned streaming service. You can find it there as well.
Oh, okay, that's what's up. So you guys got options. You got no excuses. I mean, I think we should support though, like, so, find somewhere to purchase it. But like, I can't speak volumes enough, because I think that if we just had 1% of our people that were interested in being educators and doing it in their own creative way, you know what I mean? Like the way I do it, the way you do it, maybe it's not for everybody, but just find your own niche and find a way to educate and share information. Each one teach one, and it won't take long for us to kind of turn things around, because we're dealing with so much sickness and ailments, and we're losing a lot of our knowledge because our elders are dying so early, and these things are important. So I appreciate you coming on, spending this time with us. I hope you had fun. If if you guys out there watching like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, the application of knowledge is power, and I will see you all next time.